Lauren Grace here, and welcome to the Afterlight. I'm joined today by Simonne Lee. She is inviting you and me to step into a world of light language with her soul sessions. So Simonne specializes in light language activations, energy alchemy, coaching, hypnotherapy, meditation, and her expertise is teaching you and me how to reinvent and create and embody the life that we desire. So learning these skills is mastering your own emotional clarity to claim back, creating deeper understandings and faster shifts with patterns and habits that are anchored for life-changing results. Today, Simonne is joining me. We got a big subject here. Now, I will tell you that if you are not used to this sort of language, we're going to be talking about light language. We're going to be talking about frequency coding to basically help you to shift into a 4D and a 5D way of being. And so it's going to be probably a sort of an advanced conversation, I will say. Simonne is very aware that we've got listeners of all different ages and ranges and spiritual practices. But I do want to let you know that today is probably going to be upping our spiritual level a little bit. So Simonne, thank you so much for being on the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Lauren. Glad to be here.
I am very excited to talk about this because I'm not an expert in this subject myself. So that's, why you're here, to really educate me and our listener at home as well. So before we kick off into what's language, what the H is 4D and 5D, what is frequency coding and all of this magic, can you tell me a bit about how your spiritual journey began? You seem like you've done quite a lot up to now.
So my spiritual journey began in my 30s when I actually got divorced. So I think I got divorced actually when I was 30, a pinnacle point. And then at 33, a lot of doors started to open. So for many of us, we all have traits and abilities and gifts that can lie dormant. I actually shut mine down when I was around 5 because I could really tap into people's emotions and thoughts from a very young age, but my parents divorced and it was just too much. Then when I got a divorce through crisis, it opened the gateways for me to step into the abilities again. That was my very, very first spiritual awakening that I was aware of as an adult.
I always find it so interesting to find out how people kind of got onto the journey, and the dark night of the soul, so to speak, really does seem to be sometimes the thing that ignites the fire underneath us to really search for another answer. Or what was it about that experience, do you think, that really put you on the spiritual path? Was it finding meaning? Was it finding a way to be, consoled? Were you at the depths of your despair and an angel came to you? I mean, was it even that significant? Was it a book?
I was always aware that I had abilities, but I was quite scared of them. So sometimes you think when you're getting information that you're actually creating a negative impact when you get a warning or something to be wary of for yourself or other people. You can feel that you're responsible for it because you've got the intuition to receive the information. So for me specifically I always knew it was there, but I was really scared to step into it. And during that crisis point at that time of my age, I felt like I've got nothing to lose. I'm in despair already. I'm going to step into the unknown of what scares me and it's like the floodgates opened.
Yeah, well, they always say that, when the student is ready, the teacher will enter. I guess my question to you has to be about, I started mediumship about 6 or 8 months ago now, and I can totally relate to being afraid of that before, because it took me many, many, many years to feel comfortable with actually exploring that idea. So how does one sort of overcome that fear? I mean, like you said, you had nothing left to lose, but surely fear would have still been present. Did you kind of...
100%.
Yeah. How can you dissolve fear? I know that when there's love, fear doesn't have an opportunity to show itself, but fear is a really real thing. And I think a lot of spiritual people are really hypersensitive and hyper aware of their fear.
So for me, the way I explain fear is it's just an emotion. And what we do is when we have those low level emotions, which are totally part of life, we tend to zoom in on them and magnify that intensity of what we're feeling. We can do that with love when we get on a high, but in just everyday emotions, we don't seem to zoom in at that level. So we all know how we zoom in, like making a picture bigger, 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 so we can pinpoint whatever we're looking at. And we can do that with our emotions as well. So for me, it was like to acknowledge fear. Once we can acknowledge that we're afraid and say, actually, I'm scared. What happens there, the resistance of fighting that fear can dissipate. And resistance is everything. It just sucks us dry of energy and it gets the mind going over and over and stewing over things. So for me, I just accepted that I was fearful. And then I said to my guides, I call in the right people to teach me, to guide me. I'm ready. And I said to them, I am really, really scared. And I actually swore and said I was shit scared. But what they did was they presented different people. And the thing that we have to do is just have the courage to step out of our comfort zone. We don't have to step into the abyss. We just have to take one step out of our comfort zone to start a momentum.
Yes, that's so beautiful. And like spirit will be there to catch you, won't they?
Oh, 100%. It is a leap of faith that they talk about.
Yeah.
So the first step is always the scariest. And then I always say to myself, I've been scared before and I've moved through this fear. Just like we've got to be brave. Sometimes I say, Paul, your big girl boot, put your big girl boots on. You've done it before, might have stilettos. And then I just move and take one step. We just have to really be brave for that first step. And then the second step kind of takes its momentum after that.
Yeah. Do you think that a big part of it as well is recognizing that we don't need to believe everything that we think? And I've been listening to a lot of Joe Dispenza this morning. And, it was really talking a lot of, and, a big part about it was talking about how like the ego is wanting to keep us small, and I feel that that's really true. And I feel that the ego wants to protect us. And so I'm really building my relationship with understanding and having more compassion for that ego side of myself as opposed to hating on her so much. But
our poor egos, get such a bad rap,
I know they do when they're going, wait a minute, this happened to someone or this happened to you before, and we're just trying to protect you. And I guess my question to you is, did you learn to kind of quiet the mind and take the action anyway? Or did you have to change the mindset to create that shift? I mean, how do people who are really afraid actually take that one micro step? Because in a way, it's conjuring up that bravery, it's conjuring up that courage. But for some people, the voice up here is so strong that they're just trapped in this, overwhelming feeling.
So I like to take it back a step. Let's take a step back, because fear is fear, but how each person relates to it is very different. So I always talk in a person's dominant sense. Are you visual? Are you auditory? Are you kinesthetic? So if you're more auditory, you'll hear your thoughts over and over and over, and you'll have to deal with fear through your mantras, your affirmations that way. If you're a feeler, kinesthetic, that's where the body can feel heavy, right? And fear will make you feel like you either freeze or that you're just carrying cement. So for me, it's to work out which dominant sense that you sense the fear in. If you're visual, you'll just see catastrophe or everything that could go wrong, right? So whichever one it is your dominant sense is, I say you just play the opposite. And just practice playing the opposite and imagining, because that's what everything, visualization, mantras are mainly for people that are auditory, or if they're auditory digital, they need to write it down. But that's also kinesthetic as well. So they can overlap. Is that making sense?
Yeah, no, it is making sense. It's just making me think about my own, my own self, where I'm at with that. But I want to ask you in terms of, the affirmations and all that kind of stuff for auditory people. And maybe we can, also compare it to the kinesthetic or the visual thing. Do you think that we are running core root problems, fear, let's say fear-based programs that can be overwritten through visualizing things in a different way, or physically moving in a new direction.
100%.
Right.
100%.
So do you have to dissolve those before these new programs stick? Or
you can do it simultaneously, because those programs that you're referring to is basically what the ego holds.
Right.
Going back to the ego.
Right.
And the ego is there just recording every single experience from that one perspective of how we experienced it. And then it navigates control to protect us moving forward. And that's what some people call sabotage patterns.
Yeah.
So what it is it's very hard to go, ego, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, when it's like going, no, 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 we've had this before, we're going to look after you. So there it is when I work with clinical hypnotherapy, is it goes right to the subconscious mind. We bypass a critical factor of the conscious mind, going straight into the subconscious mind. And here is where I'll change belief patterns, what you're calling the programs.
Yeah.
I'll also add in light language into it. And here we work with visualization, auditory, and kinesthetic feeling to really shift these dominant programs that we've taken on board from experiences and what we've been conditioned to believe about ourselves from the moment we're born till we're 7 years old.
Yes.
From 7 years old, we're repeating experiences to confirm those beliefs.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. One of the things that came to mind while you were talking was about the ability to be self-aware. And I was thinking about how I feel that a lot of people on their spiritual path are very self-aware or growing in their self-awareness because they're seeking something, right? They're looking outside of themselves, and then they're looking for their own reaction and their own, how they're showing up, I think, in the world in terms of what they're attracting and the kind of life that they're living. So my question to you is, self-awareness is pretty much the key here. It's about being aware that you're visualizing catastrophe, or it's feeling in your body that you're really heavy and can't physically walk or move forward, or hearing the thoughts going over and over around. What place does discernment have, and how do you discern what's serving you and what isn't serving you?
So for myself personally, when I get into any of those, because we can fluctuate between our dominant sense and then the sub-senses underneath. They're all interrelated, but we usually have a very strong one first. Is that usually when you're in your way of visualizing catastrophes or thinking and hearing things that could go wrong or feeling that sense of doom and gloom, you're actually in the future. You are not in the present moment. That is the first thing to be aware of. And when you catch yourself doing that, you can kind of like do deep breathing, even only 10 to 30 seconds. So you can do it anywhere to bring yourself back to the present moment, because you cannot visualize things going wrong or hear catastrophe or sense catastrophe in the present moment. You cannot.
Yeah.
But the ego mind will fight that to try and protect ourselves. So it's a discipline that we need, a habit we need to create, and then make a discipline of coming back into the present moment, which is so, for me, is the key to self-awareness.
Me too. Yeah. And that's been the key to my spiritual, I almost said success. That's not what I mean. I mean, my spiritual understanding, my spiritual freedom, the present moment has everything in it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is. And it's when you're in your ego and it's in that self-protection mode, it's a very, very hard concept to understand.
Yeah.
Because in the present moment, we are enough. I am enough. As soon as you step out and go, oh, should I do this? You've left the present moment.
Yes.
And in Western culture, everything is about future orientation. Everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do well at school, you'll get a good job.
Save for
Work
the future.
On yourself. Yeah, yeah. So it's like it's really ingrained in our culture and in our mind state from a very, very young age. Very young age.
Yeah.
So it's something that we have to, what I say is remove that program and create a different program so that you have that peace, that calmness within you. Anxiety is all about living in the future. How are
Yeah.
you going to cope in the future? What are you going to do in the future?
Yeah. And depression and thoughts of being down is all about the past.
Yeah,
So
100%. It's also experiences in the past that you're blocked in and you're not able to move through. And that's why sometimes we have to go backwards to clear it. So if I do that with clinical hypnotherapy, I do timeline therapy to go back and remove some of those blocks, rewrite the program around those experiences so we can expand on it instead of keeping that one-dimensional experience moving forward.
Interesting. And I know that light language can often assist people as well in healing past lives and healing past traumas. So
Correct.
we are going to get into that in this discussion. So obviously you and I could talk together underwater. So
yes,
I'm going to turn us back to the subject at hand now, which is all about light language. So can you tell me a bit about how you first got introduced to light language? And for somebody listening at home for the first time, or hearing maybe for the first time the concept of light language, how would you explain that to them?
So I'll explain what light language is first. So if you think of the earth, the world, we have many different languages. It's all vocal. It can be written down, songs in different languages. You can still feel the emotion of a song in a different language, even though you don't understand the words itself. So for those that understand star planets, there's different starseed planets. Past lives, we can come from different star solar systems. Each one has a different light language. And I want you to understand that a vibration is simply energy. And depending on how that energy moves will be the frequency. So is it okay if I just give a little bit of a longer explanation? Yeah.
Yes.
For those, I'll explain visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. If you're visual, imagine a color. If you're auditory, imagine a note. If you're kinesthetic, a feeler, imagine just one sensation. That's energy. A vibration, I want you to think of, if you're visual, that the color just pulses. Doesn't matter how it's pulsing, just choose one. If it's auditory, imagine that there's an echo. You know, all the songs now, they're all, I don't know what you call it, but
reverb.
Thank you, reverb. And if it's a sensation, you're a feeler, I want you to think of it as a pulse. And now that we go to a frequency is something that changes the type of vibration, type of energy. So if you're visual, it'll be the shade of the color. If you're auditory, it'll be the octave of the note, whether it's the same note, but it could be 2 octaves higher, 1 octave lower. If it's kinesthetic, it'll be a light sensation or a heavy sensation or a soft sensation at that pulsing. If you want to think of a radio, radio station is a frequency in itself. It gives you a different radio station. So light language has different frequencies for different things, and different star systems have a different language. I speak about 4 really well, fluently, if you want to say it that way. And the 5th one just drops in every now and then.
Oh my.
So I find that light language is like coding on a computer. We're all energy. It just changes the program. The more you listen to it, the more the body, the energetic body, the etheric body begins to align with that frequency, depending on what you're wanting.
So I listen to a lot of solfeggio beats.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So frequent. So it's also Hertz music. Some people HERTZ.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because I listen to that a lot before a mediumship reading or like a clairvoyant reading or something to really raise my vibration. Sometimes though, it's like, whoa, it's too intense. Like I've played it for people around me and they can't handle listening to it. So do frequencies become something that we get adjusted to and then we're able to kind of raise, or are some days we can handle a certain frequency and in other days we can't? Does it change?
So what I always say is sometimes people go into shock with the sensations or how they're receiving it, and they get a little bit of a fright, so they freeze. And what happens, the energy can get stuck in them. And if they're doing the shallow breathing,
I shallow breathe way too often.
Sorry, if they're doing the shallow breathing, what happens is that they're amplifying that anxiety within them, within that energy.
Right.
So if they can deep breathe into the navel, they'll actually move the energy within themselves. I always tell my students, my clients, that our intention is the direction. It gives us the navigation, whether we want to attract or push regarding energy. Our breath is the machine that moves the energy. If we're shallow breathing, we're losing energy in how we gain that momentum. If we're doing deep, deliberate breaths, we're actually moving with momentum and a gentle, solid force.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Because I know that I'm a naturally shallow breather and I can sing. So I'm aware of the diaphragm breath, which isn't a natural way for me to breathe. But I understand that if you kind of imagine you have all this energy within your body, a shallow breath isn't going to move anything. Whereas that deep intentional breath, like you said, is really promoting that stuff to kind of shift around your bloodstream and, out
within the body and within the external part of the body energetically. It's where once we understand the power of the breath, we actually have so much control around energy.
Right.
We're very powerful with energy manifestation, being magnetic, everything like that. It is all how we breathe within ourselves. You've got to remember, shallow breathing also releases certain hormones for anxiety, cortisol, adrenaline. It keeps that upper buzz going, where we need to feel, I got to release this energy. I got to release this energy. And you keep it going. And what you do is you're burning energy. It's like sitting in a car and just revving the engine, not moving. Or if you're in a car and there's traffic and you stop, start hard, you're just burning through petrol gas.
Right.
And that's what we do with our body. And then we feel depleted, and then there's a void and we go, I feel empty, something's wrong. And it's a perpetual cycle.
Right. Wow. It's fascinating. I think, breath, maybe we could have you back on the show and we could do a little bit more on breath talking, because I think that that's such a critical subject, and it's one that I struggle with. So I think our listener at home might be able to relate as well. So you did talk about, the fact that light language that light language comes from, different star seed systems, right?
Yeah.
And that, did you say there are 5 main ones, or that you have the dialect
I'm able
of 5? Yeah.
5. Yeah.
Right.
People vary. Like some people say there's 22 or more or less, but as we move into the age of Aquarius, the veil's thinning. So we're getting more and more information quicker.
Right.
And it's because the Earth's consciousness is ascending as well. We can retain more of this collective consciousness, whereas before it was too much for the conscious mind.
Right. And that's where, in a little bit, we're going to talk about moving into the 4D and the 5D, because I'm very aware that, as we're evolving and growing, and, especially for us on the spiritual journey, I'm sure you can relate to this, just based on your bio, is the fact that we're always wanting to grow and learn and be the better version of ourselves. And a big part about that is being able to evolve with the new information and being able to process that new information in a human vehicle, which is what we're currently in. Correct. So my question to you is about, how did you first experience light language for yourself? Did you hear it coming from yourself and you spoke it, and then you were aware that, wait a minute, this is connected to, say, the Pleiadians? Or did somebody teach you how to do it? Did you just channel this? What was kind of the way that it really kicked off for you? And did you even know that's what you were doing, and who the language even belonged to? So many questions. Sorry, I don't know too many.
That's all right. So my first one was, I was getting a healing at that crisis point where I said I was around 30, 33. and getting that opening floodgates of my working with my abilities, I went and got a healing. And this woman, I can't remember her name at all because I only had one healing with her. And she said, my soul's name is Aranya Light. And that's the name that I design under light language paintings, grids, and stuff like that. But while she was doing a healing on me, I began muttering something under my breath, and I had no idea what it was. And then I started working with people, healing and coaching and teaching Reiki, and I draw all these symbols that I didn't understand what I was doing at first. And I'd mutter things under my breath, and I didn't know how to get it out. So that happened for a good 10 years. And then I went to this meditation where this guy spoke light language. It was just a group of 6 of us. And in it, I had, because we were lying down doing a meditation, I went back to a lifetime where there were all memories of Thoth and just my tongue. I remember I started growing a beak and my tongue started twirling, and I was freaking out because it was felt so real in this meditation. And then I went home and I was like, oh my God, what has just happened? And it freaked me out. And then a week later, I was having a shower and all this light language just started coming out. Now, water is a conductor.
I was going to say, of course, you were in the shower because that's where intuition and all that comes in.
Because it opens up the gates as well and allows us to step into pure emotion to be able to shift dimensionally and access information. So then I started speaking light language, and then I just incorporated it into everything I did. And it just got stronger, 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 and stronger until it became second nature, like speaking English. I started drawing it. I started like just writing pieces, like letters, if you want to say, essays in light language.
Do you find sometimes, I have these conversations and I totally get where you're coming from. And then there's like, it's as though people on a spiritual path we're like in this magical fantasy world, and then all these other people, it's just amazing.
I had lots of like, what the hell are you doing, Simonne? Have you lost your mind? But the effects,
I didn't want to put it like that, but
I still get it sometimes now, but the effects like speak for themselves. The shifts speak for themselves with everyone that's like doubted. Not everyone is ready for light language, so it's not to push it on. It's like not everyone is ready to move to the 4th, 5th, and so on dimensions either. Some people are really grounded in their 3rd.
We have to do it in our own time also, because I don't know about you, but I've been overwhelmed before and I shut off spirituality for like almost 5 years. So it's very important that you do things in that kind of, in a way that's, manageable for you as well.
Because that's a spiritual crisis, that is, where you're overloaded, and that can make you feel like you're going crazy as well.
That's exactly what happened.
So you do need to pause and just take a step back and allow that internal recalibration, because all the energy grids within you are shifting too fast before your ego and conscious mind are ready to adapt to it. That's all it is.
So when you were speaking, I was thinking about Wayne Dyer, and I know he's done some chanting meditations. And I remember one time I gave it a go and I went, oh no, I turned it off right away. And then for whatever reason, I tried it again, I think maybe a year or two later. And I actually did the chanting, but it made me feel so uncomfortable with the sounds that I was making. And it was more like, that kind of, and it just made me feel I
know what the one you're talking about.
Okay, yeah. And it made me feel creeped out, honestly, that, I was emitting these sounds, and I haven't done any chanting really since. And I guess my question to you is just a lot about, what part does the communication chakra, the throat chakra play in your ability to tap into that light language and feeling comfortable with that? Because I would imagine that when you were first exploring that some of the things that were coming out, that were you able to just freely be there and give that, or did you find that there was some embarrassment or confusion or even fear around
In the
these
shower,
sounds and things?
yeah, totally fine. Let
Yeah.
myself go wild, explore it, and
Yeah.
no judgment. Doing it in front of people or with clients initially, the first few times, ego stepped in.
Yeah.
As soon as my ego stepped in, the light language stopped.
Yeah.
It shut it down, because I'm like, oh, does it sound crazy? Does this sound like, how are they received? I stepped into judgment mode of myself and trying to perceive how the other person's receiving it. Shuts down.
Yeah.
Completely shuts down. So I really had to learn how to channel in a neutral perspective without attachment.
Yeah. So was that just practice primarily?
Practice and being brave about being judged.
And you know what also has come to me when you said that? I was thinking when you were talking about how, here you are and you're just, and it's actually making me feel emotion. Like, I don't know if you're feeling emotional right now, but I feel your heart or something. But you're giving a gift. You're giving this gift. You're the channel and you're sharing. And, it's like the complete example in a way of vulnerability and an open heart.
Yeah.
And you just saying, I'm here and I'm serving. And, I don't know why we have to deal with the ego so much and the judgment voice and all that. It's very frustrating. It gets in the way of us doing what we came here to do. But anyway, I know it's part of the journey.
I think it's part of the journey. And I think that sometimes we get comfortable, and then if we get comfortable, we get complacent. So we don't always want to grow. And one of the things I always say to people is that we can't appreciate being the light or love or joy or happiness if we haven't experienced the opposite.
Yeah.
And it's not that and it's not to punish you. It's not that what you're doing wrong. It's to experience both aspects of light and darkness, because we need both. One's not better than the other. We need both to sit in the middle. And that's a neutral aspect. And that's where we're moving into the fourth and fifth dimension.
Yes. Okay, I want to talk to you about that. But before we go there, I do want to ask you, so you did talk about speaking 4 languages quite fluently, and the 5th that you're still, practicing or growing into, or whatever, however you want me to explain that. So my question to you is, how did you realize you were speaking 4 different languages? Were you able to discern where they were coming from? And yeah, do they sound different? And then obviously I would love to hear an example, whether
So the first one that came was Pleiadian. So that was just very soft, very beautiful, all heart activation. Because when you're doing and channeling light language, yes, you're using your voice, but everything is channeled through the heart like a singer. That's what makes the song emotive, because you're experiencing it that way.
Right. And like you were talking about earlier, it's a lot about feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So whether it's the note that's triggering it, whether it's the sound that's creating an image, depending on what your dominant sense is, it's all activating aspects of you, right?
Yeah.
To move you is actually just to move the heart chakra. So then I realized I was speaking Acturian as well. So that's my home planet that I have. And then it's just, then there's Syrian. The 4th one, I'm not sure. I keep asking them and they said it's not a planet that's known yet. So I get Karteen, but I can't find any information on it, like when I Google. And the 4th one is Ra energy. So the sun's energy. And it's very deep. It's a little bit shamanic in how it moves.
Oh, like pulsing?
Like,
just when you moved there, you did like a pulsing action.
Yeah, my dominant sense is kinesthetic feeling. So I always talk in feelings as my one. So I feel it. It's almost like I feel that guttural energy. You know what I mean? Like when a shaman's that thumping beats, drums, that's how I feel it. Other people might experience it differently. My favorite one is the Acturian. When someone's new to light language, I will always do Pleiadian, because it's the Christ consciousness. It's the opening of the heart. It's soft, it's gentle, it permeates at a level that most people are willing to experience at some level.
Oh, I'm getting you, because if you were to share, let's say, something that was a bit more intense, it may actually not connect to the audience, right? They may have a different effect.
That might scare them.
Yeah, right. They might want to
So,
block it as opposed to being open to the receiving of that.
So in my, like, if you've worked with me for a while or in my soul sessions, you're used to my light language, and sometimes that will come through.
Yes. But you've already been introduced to it, as opposed to
they're familiar with my energy as well. So they trust my energy, and then the light language that comes through, they're more inclined to receive.
So is the light language for you a part of does it complement your hypnotherapy, or does it complement another type of healing that you're doing, or can light language stand alone? For example, would someone come to you and go, hey, I want an entire session in light language, and then you would just channel that for them?
Light language is definitely stands alone. Definitely stands alone. It depends at the level of consciousness or spiritual level that the person's at. Usually I like to explain what's going on so that they can intellectually understand, because I think that also creates aha moments.
Okay.
I think it's really important that I use all aspects combined together so that there's a deeper understanding, a deeper dropping of the pin or seedlings to germinate within you.
Right. So they're also maybe not spending time going, what the hell is this? They know a bit about where you're taking it.
100%.
So do you have an intention before you do light language? Do you know what it's going to say? I mean, so client A comes to you and they say, hey, I'm dealing with whatever issue in my life. Can we do some light language on that? Do you then have the intention of sorting out that issue? Or like sometimes when I'm doing clairvoyant readings for people, I really appreciate a reading that's generic in a way, because I feel that spirit knows better than we do sometimes.
Yeah.
Is it like that with light language, or are you more intentional, or can you go kind of either way?
Either way. So it depends on the person's level.
Right.
So when I'm working because I can do readings and psychic ability as well, I can see how that, not know 100% how they're going to receive it. I just know the level to come in at. I know when they're not addressing a topic and they're trying to distract me from the topic that needs to be addressed. So I'll kind of let them do it, but the light language will come and shift that.
Oh, that's so cool. Can you give us a little example of what light language can sound like? And I'm also wondering, on the same note, are you kind of always on to do that? Or did you sort of have to open up before we did our reading? Or can you tap into it at any time? Is it like a switch?
Anytime I can tap into the light language. I did ground myself before the session because I knew I was going to be speaking and explaining a lot of things. But I didn't do the light language switch on because that's just automatic. Completely automatic now. I've been doing light language about 10 years now.
Wow. Okay. I'm
so
trying to do the
it's
math
like
on
how you're doing
wow.
54 next month. So
girl, get it.
So yeah, so like when you do readings, I explain to people, when you do a reading, you'll meet people and yes, you'll get information about them. It's like when someone opens their bag, you can look and see what's in their bag, or you can go, I'm not going to look in their bag. It's the same thing as that. Like I'll always get information drop in, but I'll just stop and go, not appropriate timing now.
Oh, interesting. So that's about discernment.
So I always say integrity and your value system come into anything that you do, whether it's a spiritual world, psychic ability, all of that.
Yeah, 100% agree with that entirely. My question to you too is that when someone is receiving light language from you, if I was singing to you in Italian or English or whatever, you may understand a bit about, you may be able to translate some of the words depending on your knowledge with that language. For you, when you're doing light language, could you translate it into English if you wanted to, or is it really based on feeling and that emotive and the shifting and the words don't need to be translated because it's almost deeper than that?
So I do a lot of hypno meditations where I'm doing light language, especially when I'm working on chakras or specific energy. And in the meditation, explain, we're going to move here now, and we're going to gently shift this, step into this imagination, or step into this park and feel like you're being held by Mother Earth, and the energy is going to come straight up, and then I'll move straight into light language. So I've kind of explained what we're doing.
Right.
As I said, I can translate it. I'm a feeler. So for me, feeling's everything.
Yeah, yeah. And even as I asked you that question, I kind of thought about how being able to articulate things isn't really necessary, because it's about feeling the shift and embracing that, the shift on a completely different level, right? On an energetic level, which is a higher level than matter, or not that words are matter, but it feels like a real human thing to do.
It's the ego trying to translate, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And that's okay. It's just knowing that your ego wants to know. That's all.
Yeah. And also, for a listener at home, when your ego steps in, you're at a lower frequency. You're at a lower vibration. Like when you're doing the kind of work that Simonne's doing, you have to be at a high level where the ego is actually dormant and asleep, because otherwise you're competing.
Part of my
with
job
two heads.
is to help them step the ego aside, because what's happening, ego is just third dimension. That's it. Third dimension is I, you. Fourth dimension is we, which is that neutral perspective, no judgment. And then we move into the fifth, which is oneness. Right?
Yeah, that's funny.
It's as simple as that. Yeah.
Yeah, because ego, it's a separation. Fourth dimension is a we together, and fifth is a one. Okay. And it's funny because I know we're part of the whole, but I've never been able to really understand that. It's as though I want to intellectually understand it, but I haven't been able to feel that truth. And maybe because I'm not there yet,
It's
but
not that you're not there yet.
You said that, put it in that way. Go ahead.
The thing is, when we're stuck in the third dimension, is we like to project blame. Right. Or you're wrong, I'm right, or I'm wrong, you're right. It's that, as you said, that real big separation. You hurt me, you did this to me, or I did this to you. And we all make mistakes. We all hurt people intentionally and unintentionally. That's life. Taking accountability for that, yes. But if you step into the fourth dimension, which is purely just consciousness, it's not the physical body stepping in, it's the consciousness is moving through the dimension. The fourth dimension is not about laying blame. It's about seeing, understanding, and accepting. And it gets very, very tricky when you feel guilty, you feel shame, you feel hurt. They're lower frequencies, lower vibrations. And that's I say the catalyst for us to move and evolve. We need a catalyst. We need discomfort for us to try to go, I'm going to step out of my comfort zone. Yeah. And I think creates a little bit of desperation that we need to change. Yeah, but if we don't have that, then we don't change, right? Then we get complacent. We stay the same. Yeah, exactly. So can we hear a bit about light language? And I will say too, just before you get started, that I love that you're going to do Pleiadians, because I believe, and I'm understanding this, I'm working at feeling this truth as well as understanding it. But I think the heart is the key for all of it. I realize that more than ever, that the 100%. Heart is the gate. And and I'm just interested in, the heart connects the lower chakras, which is the earth domain, earth vibration, to the upper chakras, which is moving into spiritual transformation. Everything needs to go in and out of the heart chakra. It is the gateway to everything. Most of us are scared to step into the heart chakra because there's a lot of shadow work or inner child work, part work that we need to do to clear the fear, the pain, the hurt. And that's the block that I was talking about, that the ego mind really holds on to and pushes forward into the future.
Yeah, and just for our listener at home, just before you get started here, I don't keep alluding to it, just keeping the listener along, making them stay. But I just want to say for a listener at home that if you go back a couple of episodes, I did have an episode that was all about inner child and working with the mother wound. And then also previous to that, I did work with Rhiannon Hines, and we did an episode that was all about Keepers of the Light Codes, which is all about heart as well.
Beautiful.
So if they're wanting some more resources, I just wanted to direct them there. So Simonne,
Definitely.
my sister, take it away.
Okay, so all I want you to do is close your eyes. And I want you to place both hands on your chest, on your heart space, your heart chakra. I want you to imagine breathing deeply into that heart space, into the palms of your hands. And just by doing that, we drop our awareness, our focus into the heart space, gently opening, gently allowing the energy to move through. And as you do this, just give yourself permission to receive this light language just by saying yes to yourself. Karanina pire ikia mana are. Tira are kia mana mana kia. Toro. Toro ikinya mana aare shiti ina mana kare. Mina. Mina ire tia mana na 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 na. Orukia mana kare itire nina. Toro. Toro. Kia pare ina. Ina para aranana kinya mina. Oronina are. Oronina are tina kire. Orokia mana are shiti ina na kire. Ina na 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 na. Ah, kia mana nina. And just breathe. Arakia mana na kinya. Oro. Oro ikire tina. Are kia mana. Moro are kia pina na kinya. Toro hina nana. Toro are. Are mana kare tire kia na 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 na. Tire tinya na 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 kinya. Oro. Oro are kire ina para. Are tanya na na kinya. Are. Oro ina na na na. Using your breath just to move this energy, washing it all through you and allowing it to permeate around you gently, like a beautiful hug around your body. Horu arakara mana nina kire, toru are nina, toru anakare nina tiri, ara na 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 kare, ire poru na 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 ni. Kia nana kinya. Are kiana. Are tia. Oro tia ka are puru arana. Tare. Just breathe and allow it to integrate into every aspect of who you are. Let your soul, let your heart space align. Aranina tarenina iratana nana kare. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes and stretch. And just feel and observe the different sensations within your body as you completely and fully step into the body now. Are kia.
That was beautiful. That felt like a wise woman, coming and circling you in this beautiful hug, and you just didn't want to leave. That was,
Oh, good. Thank
yeah,
you.
it was really beautiful. Thank you
That's
for
good.
that.
You're welcome. Sorry, my headset keeps falling out. But yeah, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's very
Yeah,
soft.
yeah, and it felt like a beautiful entry level, like you're talking about, a beautiful entry point for anybody. That just really felt, yeah, so comforting and really brought me into my body, whereas I tend to be too much in my head.
Yeah, it
So
comes into
that
your
was really,
heart space. So as you would know, that energy is anything that's recorded with energetic work in it, alchemy in it, holds that frequency in any recording. So in your podcast, you can just replay it over and over whenever you want to really feel into that, because it holds all that frequency in there.
I will do that. I'm just writing that down. Yeah, it's so powerful to just sit there. And it's funny because you probably did that for 5 minutes or something. And so often we forget that 5 minutes as a window into the present, into your soul, into connection to our spirit guides and our higher self, and we don't take the time, we make it into
100%,
being
yeah.
something bigger. I'll release that as well as a mini episode so that our listener at home, you can just go right to it anytime that you want to. So we are ending. We're running out of time. This always happens to me. We will just rebook again, because you and I would love to learn more about you and what you're doing, and talk more about the power of the breath, and maybe connecting a bit more with maybe our guides and things like that. I think you and I would have so many things to talk about. Before we kind of, wrap up though, I do want to know a little bit about how light language can assist people in healing past lives, healing with trauma, and also if you could talk a bit about moving us out of the 3D and into the 4D and the 5D. So what can we do at home? Is it about booking a session with you? Is it about listening to these things to kind of start the shift? Is it about accepting that we need to do that work and, looking at it
it's
like
about
that?
being open to it. A lot of the time you have to be open to wanting this shift, because it doesn't matter if you're stuck and you refuse to connect to it. It's not going to, nothing's going to work, because the ego minding control can block many, many things. So basically,
and you have free will.
Shift. That's the free will. So basically, I have soul sessions, which is where it's a membership. I drop 2 sessions a month, 60-minute sessions, 30 minutes of me talking, and then 60 minutes of a hypno meditation with light language and light language activations. So that really works beautifully. You work at your own pace. You have access to all the recordings. I also work with one-on-one, if you want, sessions, so we can specifically target what you want to shift. The other thing that I do, which I absolutely love, is I do light language grids. You can see this one here. That's healing.
Oh, that's
light language.
Gorgeous. And for our listener on the podcast, Simonne's shown that, and there's a YouTube video of this. You can go and have a look. That looks like sacred geometry. Is that what that is?
I call it sacred geometry, but it's light language. You can see all the different vibrations going in. So I use this as a ceremony cup. This one's called healing. So I also have these as little mat grids. So like mouse pads, and you can use them. You just leave them in the room, and that energy frequency will permeate the room and anyone that's in it. You want an instant effect. You just look into the grid and you breathe into it, and it automatically, it's a fast honing in that shifts you internally.
That's so beautiful. And I just had a drop in for you. I don't know if you're already doing your Oracle decks, but your Oracle cards, but they're telling me to tell you.
I've had so many people tell me.
Yeah. Oh,
thank you for the reminder. Thank you. Thank you.
That didn't come from me. They're just like, remind her. I'm like, I'm reminding her. When you were doing the light language, I felt that it was penetrating, at a heart level and not at an intellectual level. Is that how people can use it to help them healing their past and healing trauma? Because it almost can get in at a deeper level where they don't have to be so intellectual about it.
So trauma basically is a blocked emotion, a trapped experience that we're stuck in, or we've abandoned a part of ourselves in that experience at that specific age. And that's why you do inner child work, parts work, or timeline therapy, whatever. So shadow work. So basically, what we do when we become adults is we intellectualize the trauma. We create a narration, a story about it, when actually that is not the actual experience. We just need a justification of why we're feeling this emotion or this sensation. So when you do light language, it bypasses the need for the intellect.
Yes.
And hits straight into that blocked energy, because all it is blocked energy from that experience in the heart space.
Right. And I
That's
had this
what a
visual
trigger
when you said
is.
that,
Yeah.
where it's like almost like a shadow, like a rain cloud, and then the light language are like these bolts of light that go in and that just disperse it all and allow it to
You're
kind
visual
of clear.
then too.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's how you're moving through, and that's what your dominant sense is, however it is, will help you release that blocked energy. So it's not so, because we store that blocked energy in the heart, and then it's deposited somewhere else in the physical body, and that they're all the triggers that we have in life.
Right.
Where we start overreacting and jumping into a reaction and stuff like that, where the mind doesn't even know what's going on. We actually time travel, is what I call it, back to that incident. And we lose all concept of rationale and just physically react.
Wow, that's amazing. I will say, I don't know about our listener at home, but I'm feeling like my throat is a bit sore and I'm getting a bit fuzzy in my head. So feeling a bit light. So someone's like, yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, well, I can just ground you guys now energetically so that it's not so intense. I'll just do that quickly.
Maybe just do that right before we sign off.
Finish,
here.
Yeah. And just take a couple of deep breaths. Just really anchored you into your body and into the physical realm, into the earth's domain, connecting you to the earth's core. And the more you breathe, the deeper you breathe, the more deliberately you breathe, the more you'll shift into this beautiful energy connecting to the earth. Beautiful. And just gently integrate all of it, because it's so beautiful.
Perfect. I felt like the sediments going drop down. So Simonne, I will put a link to everything to connect to you in the show notes. I don't think that we talked enough about 4D, 5D. Is that something that we could talk about in another episode? Do you feel that
Correct. Yeah, 100%. There's a lot more to talk about, because it's a consciousness. I will say that I've given your Afterlight listeners a 20% discount on all the products regarding light language.
Oh, wonderful. We'll put that promo code in the show notes as well. I'm just writing that so I don't forget. And I will bring you back for a part 2 so that we can keep the conversation going about the 4D and the 5D, and then we can talk about breath work and maybe some other ways about tapping into your higher self. Maybe we can explore a bit about how you deal with working with timelines and things like that, or whatever you feel called to. So thank you so much for being here. I feel like we've just started talking, but it has been an hour if I check my clock.
I know we have. Yeah. So thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Me too. And we'll see you next time on the show.
Thank you. Bye.
Just trying to find end here.